This to me is the coach's superpower. It's being able to connect the dots. So that's the C, is
Mm.
connect the dots. Because during all these conversations, as you're making your observations, as you're asking questions, and as you're assessing those answers, you in your mind, if you're truly listening and truly observing, you're going to be able to connect the dots that typically that person cannot connect on their own.
What's the one premier event that brings the global attractions industry together? IAPA Expo 2025, happening in Orlando, Florida, November 17th through the 21st.
From breakthrough technology to world-class networking and immersive education, IAPA Expo 2025 is where you find possible.
And just for our audience, you'll save $10 when you register at iapa.org/IAPA Expo and use promo code EXPO, APROS 10.
Don't miss it. We won't.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic.
All right.
Yes, yes. So I have a question for you.
All right, let's hear it.
If I remember correctly, you said you played tennis when you were growing up. Is that right?
I did. Yes, you do
Okay.
remember correctly. Yeah.
Okay, good. And when you were playing tennis, was this in an organized fashion where you had a coach?
Yes, there definitely was a coach for the team.
Okay.
Yes.
And good or bad, what did that coach do?
That coach helped facilitate my skills, provided feedback that helped me grow in tennis. And I even remember some of the coaching that I was given back then that I would say transferred into other parts of life too.
Okay, excellent. Sounds like they were an impactful coach.
Yeah.
Good, 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 good. Well, in the business world, we also coach our team members to do exactly what you just said, to give them feedback, to inspire them, to help hold them accountable. And a couple of years ago, because I also do a lot of one-on-one coaching and help other people come up with ways that they can coach their teams, I came up with an acronym for the word coach that kind of outlines my process and my steps to kind of coach people from a business standpoint. And because so many people have asked about it, I thought it'd be a fun conversation to have here, and you can see if this relates back to your experience with your tennis coach.
I can't wait to hear it.
Good. So, as we've said, this is an acronym. The word coach stands for a couple of different things. What I will say at the onset is that this is a non-linear process. So when you look at the things that we're going to talk about, it's not a one, two, three, four type of process. Many of these things can happen at the same time. Many of these things do happen at the same time, but that also helps the coach really assess what the situation is so that they can truly help that person that they're working with. So, the first C of coach is conversation. When I start my coaching relationships or when I encourage people to sort of take on this coaching mentality, we talk a lot about just having a conversation with people, getting to know them, getting to know their quirks, getting to know what makes them tick, just having these conversations that allow you to get to know that person a little bit better. This doesn't have to be a quote unquote coaching conversation. This doesn't have to be a formal conversation. I remember many times when I was an operational manager and I would walk out into the park and I would just talk to people. And it really helped me get to know them so that when it was time to have a conversation about their behavior or their performance, we had some sort of trusting foundational relationship, right? So that's where I think the conversation as the starting point really takes hold, because if you don't have a relationship in, even a baseline relationship with someone, it's really hard to coach them. It's really hard to, help them see your point of view. So to me, it really starts with a relationship, and the relationship starts with a conversation. Okay.
All
Now,
right.
again, this is a nonlinear process. So as I go through some of the other ones, you might say, well, that's having a conversation too. And you'd be right.
Well, it sounds like, a conversation. What I like about that is that it's the conversation is a pretty non-threatening term, right? Is that it's not like this is discipline, this is a performance improvement meeting. It's a conversation, and that is totally neutral. And even if it is one of those things that might have a more intense kind of tone with it, calling it a conversation, treating it like a conversation probably makes that team member feel much more comfortable.
Oh, absolutely. And it's more
Hmm.
real and it's more genuine,
Hmm.
because it's
Yeah.
two people having a conversation. It's not, oh, we've got to sit down and talk about this, very difficult conversation topic, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So that's kind
Yeah.
of the first overarching step, if you will, even though I don't like calling it a step because it's not a one, two, three type of thing, but you understand what.
Yes.
And C is the first letter of the word coach. So that's why
And the
conversation
fourth.
comes first. We're going to get to that. Yes, it is. We're going to get to that. So the O stands for observation. While you're having these conversations, it's critically important that you observe how that other person either responds to you, what they say, their body language. So you're observing with your eyes, you're seeing what's happening, you're observing with your ears, you're really listening to what they have to say. Because if you are not engaged in observing what they have to say, it's really hard to do the model, the rest of the steps. So to me, again, as you're having these conversations, they could be those informal conversations, they could be formal conversations, but you're watching for things like eye contact. You're watching to see if they're fidgeting. You're watching, again, for their body language to see how they might be responding. You're observing whether the words that they're saying match what their body language is saying. So there's a lot of observation that happens when you're a coach. And thinking back to when you played tennis, I would imagine your coach was observing how you hit the ball and how you swung the racket and where you put your feet. And so there's all those things that a sports coach will watch and observe. And a business coach, a leadership coach, has to observe those same things.
Yeah, and I feel like, observation is probably a big part of leadership. I remember being in Dr. Duncan Dixon's class, who thankfully we were able to have him on the podcast several years ago. I remember learning the concept of MBWA, which is management by not wandering around, but wondering around.
Yeah,
And it was purely from an observational standpoint that you're really soaking it in. And then refining your leadership based on your observations.
absolutely. And I would also kind of add that observations are they're very focused tasks, right? So when you're
Hmm.
listening to someone, there's a lot of things that can be going on, a lot of distractions that might take your focus in another way. So you really do have to train your brain to focus on what it is that that person is saying, and what you're observing with that person, because it's a very active process. Hearing, on the other hand, no matter what is going on in the room around you, you can hear it. But if you're not focused on it, you're not really listening. So
Hmm.
focus is really an important part of the observation part.
All right, let's get to A.
Let's get to A. So A is kind of a twofer. So
Mhm.
it's about asking questions and assessing the answer. So in a lot of my coaching sessions, we will get through probably 15, 20 minutes of just me asking questions, because I'm naturally curious about what's going on. I want to know as much as possible, but I also feel like it's a great way to get people talking so that you can make more observations. If somebody
Mhm.
were to come to me and say, "Hey, Matt, I have this problem," well, I might be able to suggest something based on my previous experience. But until I ask more questions and I can really dive in and peel back the onion, so to speak, I won't know if I'm actually answering the right question. And this happened to me so many times when I was an operational manager, and I'd respond to a guest who had a complaint, and I would want to fix the issue right away. But until I started asking more questions, I may have actually tried to solve the wrong problem. So, same
Mm.
thing happens with coaching. When you're asking questions, you're asking typically open-ended questions to get people to think a little bit, to get people to dive a little deeper for themselves into that. And then you're also, again, you're assessing their answers and you're assessing how they're responding to that particular question. So if you say to someone, well, do you think that when you do this, that other person, will be inspired to do that? Well, no, that's not really what I see. Okay, well, I've asked a question. I'm now assessing that maybe that wasn't the right direction to go. So now I'm going to ask another question, right? I'm observing that
Mhm.
their response is maybe taking us in a different direction. Or maybe I ask the question in a way that they're giving me a different answer than I expected. So maybe I didn't ask the question properly, or I didn't ask the question for what I was really looking for, or they didn't interpret the question in the way that I intended. So this whole phase of asking and assessing, yes, it's part of a conversation. Yes, you're observing while you're doing that, but you're also really gathering more and more information so that you can give them the best feedback and advice that you can.
In the interest of the intersection of the guest and employee experience here, I'm seeing a lot of parallels to things that I talk about with service recovery and the last model, and that sometimes people skip to the solve portion of it, and they might solve the wrong problem, or they'll rush into it without fully understanding who the guest is. And this is the exact same thing, but from the employee side of really understanding what is going on with that team member. Not to say that this should be the couch method, but if it was, if that was the word, then that would then understand could be the you. But ask and assess, I like you said, it's the two first. So you've got the C.O.A.C.H method, kind of like how I used to call the last model the latast model because
Right.
of adding in the extra step there. So taking your
Yes,
own creative liberties with the acronym.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So should we get to the second C?
Let's do it. I'm so curious what it is.
The second C, this to me is the coach's superpower. It's being able to connect the dots. So that's the C, is
Mm,
connect the dots. Because during all these conversations, as you're making your observations, as you're asking questions, and as you're assessing those answers, you in your mind, if you're truly listening and truly observing, you're going to be able to connect the dots that typically that person cannot connect on their own. And when I see this happen in a conversation, like with a client, they may say something at the beginning of a conversation. Let's say we're getting together for an hour, and they may say something in the first 5 minutes, and I'll listen to that and I'll kind of chalk it away. And then they say something that might be contradictory 45 minutes later as we're talking about something else. I've asked them another question. I've dug a little deeper into the situation that they're talking about, and I'll say, well, earlier you said this. And now you're saying this. So now I'm connecting these two things that they may not have seen in their own mind. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize that. That's where sort of the light bulb moment happens. And it's really an interesting process to be a part of because if I'm seeing someone in person, you can definitely see the kind of the eyes get a little bit bigger and they're like, oh, okay. Or they're like, I'm writing this down. Then you know that you've gotten dots that they're really, really, truly connecting with. But it's the coach's ability to observe things, listen to what they're saying, ask the right questions. And sometimes we're not asking the right questions. Sometimes it's asking enough questions to get to the right question that will
mm,
allow you to be able to connect the dots. Now, there's people that I've worked with where we'll have a 60-minute conversation and I can connect the dots within 60 minutes. There's some people that I can talk to for months and it takes that long sometimes to connect the dots. Oh, you said this 2 months ago and now we're saying this or now we're going through this. So it really does take that keen observation so that you can remember what they said in the past so that you can make those connections. Because again, to me, this is the coach's superpower.
hmm I like how you call it the superpower there. And I think that the reason why it's a superpower is because it really requires active leadership and intentionality, that you're not going to connect the dots if you are uh, if you are just kind of crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and just sort of checking the boxes with leadership functions, but it requires extending beyond that. So I like that you brought that up because it might just think, okay, well, what am I doing as a leader? Well, making sure my employees are following the rules, coaching them if they fall below, coaching them in the most basic sense of the of the term,
Mhm.
recognizing if they go above, make sure they get paid on time, etc. I was just like, all right, here's the checklist, but connecting the dots requires you to be fully present.
Absolutely. And it could be something where it's not a huge behavioral change that you're looking for, but you've got a team member that's always 5 minutes late, 5 minutes late, 5 minutes late, and you're wanting to write them up or do those things. Well, the coaching outlook would say, I need to connect the dots. Why is this person always 5 minutes late? Oh, they're dropping their kids off at daycare,
Mhm.
and they're waiting in the line of people to drop off their kids. They say goodbye to their kids and they get here as fast as they possibly can. So maybe they need an afternoon shift, right? Or maybe
Mhm.
they need, a little bit of later start time so that, if the operation allows, so that they're not rushing through traffic, they're not trying to, beat the clock and maybe even put themselves in harm's way as they're driving crazily just to get to work and they're still 5 minutes late. So that's again where you look to connect the dots of what's really happening so that you can have the right results on the other side.
All right, I can't wait to hear what the H is.
Well, here's another twofer.
Okay.
So again, taking liberties, it's my model. I can do what I want with it. So once we have had all these conversations, we're going to continue to have conversations. The H is really to help and hold accountable. So to help figure out what the next step is. So if you have now connected the dots and you've now pointed out to someone that if you do this thing differently, you're going to get a different result. If you talk to this person where you've maybe been a little anxious to talk to them previously, but you, you know, put on your big boy pants and you talk to that person, you have the conversation. How do we do that, right? So, for example, if we say, yeah, I really need to tell my boss X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, how the coach helps them do that, because the coach isn't going to be the one that does that, right? Your tennis coach was not out there on the court, hitting the ball over the net, right? That's not their job. Their job is to make sure that you know how to do it the best way you can by giving you feedback, by observing. And it's the same thing for a leadership coach. The people that I work with, the people that I coach one-on-one or even in group settings, I'm not in their facilities, right? I'm not in their directors meetings. I'm not in those situations where I'm doing something that's going to help move them forward. It's all about them. So as a coach, now I have to help figure out or help that person figure out the best way to approach that situation. So again, if somebody says, "Yeah, I got to tell my boss X, Y, and Z." Okay, let's talk through that. How will you say it? What words will you say? Write it down first. Like give them some tips on how to actually do that so that they feel more comfortable and confident with actually going to do that. And then the holding accountable is the next time we chat, how'd that conversation go with your manager?
Mhm.
Or, oh, you're going to talk to them tomorrow? Send me an email. Let me know how it went. So now there's some accountability for actually doing it. And they might come back and say, it was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Great. Let's talk about why. So that's again helping them figure out how to do it even better in the future. But even just asking the question of, did you do it? Helps hold people accountable because now there's somebody holding their feet to the fire that they've got to do it. They said that they wanted to do it. In all these conversations and all the connecting of the dots, they recognized and they came to terms with, yes, this is what I need to do. In order to move this situation forward, this is what I have to do. Great. We've talked through how it's going to happen. Wonderful. Now go do it.
Mhm.
So there's that person that's going to be asking about it later on. So the H is help and hold accountable. And while you're holding them accountable, is that also another conversation? You bet it is.
Right. And I think the help and hold accountable is kind of it's like a step one, two of the follow through, essentially, that the accountability starts with the help and then saying, hey, the next time we meet, I'm going to ask you about this. So you're helping to set that team member up for success that, yes, I'm going to be held accountable, but I'm not going to be surprised when you then ask me how did that go? Because
Yeah.
you've set it forth that you're going to follow up on this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had one relatively new client recently who said, I waited till the very last minute, like the day before our next call. She said, but I did it. I did the most uncomfortable thing. I went and I talked to my boss, and it went a lot better than I thought it was going to. And then when I asked her about it, she was like, yes, I did it, and here's how it went. And so now she knows that she is going to be held accountable for those conversations and for those actions that she says that she's going to take.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Good to
Thank
hear
you.
just like a quick case study at the end of that. So
Absolutely.
this
So
is great.
I'm curious, like if you think back to your tennis coach, did that tennis coach do similar things?
Yeah, probably. It was middle school, by the way.
That's
So
okay. That's okay.
yeah, it definitely improved my skill, I would say. I mean, I'm not a pro tennis player these days, but I mean, I can remember some of those things back then that were the observations, the assessing, and kind of that one-on-one feedback and the conversations with it, and then being held accountable to that to improve my skills and help the team win.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And so that is the coaching model that I use. That's the one that I teach to other people. If anybody has any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. You can reach out on the socials. You can send me a direct email at matt@performanceoptimist.com or the Attraction Pros email, which is attractionpros@gmail.com. More than happy to go over that again, or just rewind the episode and listen to it again.
And share it with a friend or colleague or coworker or boss who you think would help benefit from this.
Absolutely. So for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we like to connect the dots and we are all attraction pros.